news about a little Hoosier kid. I think his grandchildren and great-grandchildren would like to know something about his background and what his setting is and where he come from. See what his great-grandfather that came in from England, and he settled in Pennsylvania, and his son Peter. We'll call this little fellow Chuck so that we can have some idea just what we're doing as we go along. So from now on we'll just call him Chuck. And Chuck's great-great-grandfather was born in Pennsylvania, and he was born on June the 23rd in 1773. As a young man, he left Pennsylvania and went to Virginia. It was there he met Mary Steffi, daughter of Henry Steffi, and on August the 29th, 1793, they were married in Wythe County, Virginia, by Reverend John Steger. In 1813, he was, with his family, came to Knox County, Indiana, and settled in Washington Township, where Peter was a farmer, and he also built log houses and barns. He was one of the most noted hewers of his time. He could hew a log without leaving a nick or either a broad or a narrow axe. The largest building he ever erected was a log barn, 38 feet by 90 feet by 48 feet to the comb. Mary and Peter had 10 children, and so Stephen Fox's was the Chuck's grandfather. So Stephen Fox was born in Wythe County, Virginia, before his father moved to Knox County, Indiana. But on December the 10th, 1811, and was about 2 years old when his father left Virginia to come to Indiana. He went to both English and German schools, and at 12 years old, he had to walk 3 miles to school, his father being a teacher. At the age of 16, he took charge of his father's farm and 312 acres, which he continued to manage till their death. In 1863, he married Hannah Hollingsworth, daughter of Peter and Sarah Young Hollingsworth. Stephen and Hannah had 9 children, and Peter, his father, was married in 1870, was born in 1873, then passed away in 1919. He married Mary Philippi, and she was born in 1846, died in 1918. So Hannah and Stevens and the children were members of the Methodist Episcopal Church, and there is a window in the United Methodist Church in Bruceville, Indiana, with his name on it. In 1836, Stevens brought 100, that's Chuck's grandfather, bought 175 acres of land largely on credit. He paid that off, and he and his boys increased the farm to 726 acres. They lived in the old homestead and was cared for by their youngest son Adam, until their death. Stevens died in 1814, in 1890. Chuck was only 6 years old then, and Hannah died in 1589. They were buried at Bruceville Cemetery. It was told when Stevens died he was so well thought of. When the body reached the church, they started tolling the bell, and there were still buggies that hadn't left the house yet, a distance of about 2 miles. in those days, they just had the dirt roads and horse and buggies and the wild country. So that gives us a setting on about the traces back to the boy's great-great-grandfather when he come from England. Now, I think we had better get a little set up on the mother's side. The Foxes were members of the Methodist Church and were good Christian folks all the way through. Well, now we'll take up the Philippi side. That's Chuck's mother's people. The earliest records of the Philippi's indicate that they were of French descent coming to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania from the province of Alsace in France about 1732. William Philippi's grandfather, John Philippi, married Eva Eckenberger in August 2nd, 1757 in Warwick Township, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. About 1770, John and Eva moved to Wythe County, Virginia, where he farmed. John's sons, Christopher and Christiana, were the fathers of William and Peter, respectively. Peter Philippi came to Indiana in 1832. William came about 1835 with the John Horn. Mrs. Horn, Christiana Vaught, was William's first cousin. William and his wife, Mary Dunning Philippi, were no doubt favorably impressed by the description of southern Indiana and went back to Wythe County, Virginia, sent back to Wythe County, Virginia by William's first cousin, Peter Philippi, and Christiana Arne Boyd's wife of John T. Boyd, leaving the beautiful mountains of Virginia behind them, and with farewells to William's mother, Elizabeth Steffi Philippi, and his father, Christopher, in the Revolutionary War soldier, they packed up their belongings to come to Indiana. Now, on this farewell to their brother Christopher that was in the Civil War, he had 3 brothers that were in the Civil War, and so that made 4 of them. And the younger boy that was in the service was born in Indiana near Asbury Chapel. But back over into the Fox side, the Foxes settled near Bruceville, Indiana, so that they were only a few miles apart. So in their services and the work in their Bruceville church and in the Asbury church is about 7 miles apart. And the Philippines and the Foxes lived about 3 miles apart, so that throw them in connection and get acquaintance with one another. So they picked up their belongings in Virginia, and the records in Knox County Courthouse show that on December the 2nd, 1837, William Philippi purchased land adjoining John Horn's in the Asbury Chapel neighborhood. Records also show that on November the 30th, 1854, William and Mary Philippi gave land to the trustees of Asbury Chapel Church to be used as a cemetery. I wish to say here that William and Mary Philippi gave land to the trustees for the cemetery, and these William and Mary are the great-grandfather and mother of, well, you wish to back up a little. William and Mary Philippi was Chuck's grandfather and grandmother. So they lived on the farm there close, and that's where his Chuck's mother was born there in Indiana, close to the Asbury Chapel. Now, William and Mary Philippi were charter members of Asbury Chapel and are buried in the cemetery there. Now, while I was going into detail about the Phillips there in Asbury Chapel, it got to be the stomping grounds for the little kid Chuck. His mother's brother, Uncle Mart, that was in the Civil War, carried 2 bullets in his leg for a while, and the calf of his leg, and one of them they didn't find, and he carried it to his death. So his grandfather, though, passed away in July the 7th, 1865, at age 62. In 10 months and 7 days, Mary died February the 22nd, 1879, age 78 years, 11 months and 12 days. Well, the reason why I'm bringing this out, Chuck never saw his grandfather, Philippine, and grandfather and grandmother, Philippine. So there was 6 children were born in Wythe County, Virginia, and then there was 3 born in Indiana, including Chuck's mother. So this is about all the history that we need to put down, because it brings us down to the time that Peter Fox, his father, married Mary Philippi of Asbury Chapel. So, but most of their work was done in the Bruceville Church, because they were closer there, and that's where Chuck was taken to Sunday school and church to begin with. But look back over it and see that the people that migrated from England and France, well, they worked around and landed in Knox County, Indiana, so that is where little Chuck was born on 1884 in a little log house there in August the 28th. Warm, hot weather, but the little Chuck, he seemed to thrive well on it and come out of it all right.